Do you believe art can change the world? So do I. On this show, we meet artists whose work is doing just that. Welcome to Art Heals All Wounds. I'm your host, Pam Uzel. You know, almost every time we hear about terrible acts of atrocity, like mass shootings as one example, there's always a familiar story. Sorry, but it usually is a he never felt like he fit in. He didn't feel like he belonged. This act of violence, it's implied, is the direct result of that. From the guests on this show, I've heard a different version of that story. He didn't feel like he fit in or that he belonged. So he became an artist. He found ways to communicate and express himself creatively. And because he knew how it felt not to belong, he had a lot of empathy for anyone else feeling that way too. I'm so glad you're here for another episode where we explore belonging. Creative pursuits are such an effective way to communicate and to feel connection. I want this podcast to be one of the places that helps people to feel like they belong. Do you feel like your creative journey was fueled by a desire to belong? Please go to my website, arthealsallwoundspodcast.com, and leave me a voicemail sharing your story. I want to get enough of these voicemails to start creating episodes with them. Today I'm sharing the story of Umberto Nicoletti and his new book, Asylum. Umberto is an Italian photographer and director. He specializes in portrait photography in the fields of advertising, music, fashion, and publishing. But this last project is something that really spoke to him. Asylum is a coffee table book with photographs of some of the many LGBTQIA+ refugees who have left their home countries due to discrimination. In Umberto's eyes, these courageous people deserve to be recognized as heroes, so he took his skills as a fashion photographer to take bold and beautiful glossy photos of those included in this book. His desire was to celebrate all of his subjects for the bravery it took to embark on a quest to find a place where they can fully express who they are without fear of violence or recrimination. Beyond simply photographing these asylum seekers, Umberto also asked them to share some of their stories. What he heard were stories of great pain, resilience, hopefulness, and joy. In this episode, Umberto shares what he learned in doing this project and how his own experiences with belonging helped him to connect with the asylum seekers photographed in this book. And he hopes that this book will bring greater awareness to the ongoing discrimination against members of the LGBTQIA+ community that forced them to flee their home countries. Hi, Umberto. Thank you so much for being on Art Heals All Wounds. Can you start by telling us who you are and what you do?
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Umberto Nicoletti, and I'm a photographer and director.
I have been wanting to talk to you particularly about a book project that you just finished, this beautiful book called Asylum. And I'm wondering if you can talk about that. What is Asylum?
Asylum is my first photography book. I dedicated myself for 6 years to this project. And it's not just a book of beautiful pictures, but a project that talks about the political asylum of LGBTQI+ individuals that are persecuted in their home country based on their gender and sexual orientation.
So it took you 6 years to do this project?
Yes.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, but also COVID happens, so a lot of stuff when.
Yeah, that's true. We all had a major interruption in our timetables. So I'm so curious, why this topic? What drew you to making this book, and what was the origin idea for this book?
For me, it was important because more than 40% of the country in the world still have laws against LGBTQI plus community. And I started this project thanks to a dear friend of mine that is called Diego Puccio, who is a volunteer for an Italian organization called Arcigay. And I was introduced to the situation of criminalization against the community worldwide, and because he helps and assists the refugees obtaining asylum.
Mm.
I was not aware of this issue, and I was also surprised that also my inner circle of friends doesn't know anything about this issue. So for many years, he asked me to do a project, an artistic project with the organization to talk about the issue, but maybe I was not ready. But in 2016, I tried to think at the project because I used to work like in advertising and fashion, and I do portraits, but commercial work. So it was not something that I was used to do pictures like journalistic picture or stuff like that. So together with the organization, we want to work on a project that could inform people and also inform the LGBTQI plus community itself. So we started in Milan, but I soon realized that it would be too limited to talk about asylum just in Italy because I wanted to extend it to the whole world because it's a worldwide issue. And for me, it was essential to give a kind of overview of what is happening globally. So we started to do the first shooting, and then all the idea for the project came into my mind. That was the starting of the project.
Yeah, well, this book, it's gorgeous. The photos are gorgeous, but the content, you start at the beginning giving some statistics about the number of countries that criminalize the LGBTQ plus community. And I was shocked, honestly, by how many criminalize it. And I was also shocked by this kind of gray area of how many countries, while they don't criminalize it, they also don't have protections in place against discrimination, violence, the whole range of things that the LGBTQI community are facing in their home countries.
Yes, that's why for me it was really important because, I never heard about this issue. And so for me, I was stunned. Me too.
Yeah.
So after that, we started to do the shooting in Milan. Then I worked also with other organizations around the world, and we took picture in Washington, D.C., New York, Toronto, and London. Because I was curious to know how the asylum process works in other places, and also it's a worldwide issue that feeds with prejudice, shame, and fear. And so that's why it's always kept hidden. So that was I was really determined to talk about this issue.
Right. Well, I do want to just talk a little bit more about the style of the book. It is very beautiful. It's a coffee table book, and it's very beautiful. And I think you went for the maximum effect in terms of you use black and white, but also some bronze in there. So I'm wondering if you could talk about why you chose that style.
Yes. In the beginning, I told you that I was a little bit skeptical to do this project because I don't work with reportage photography, journalistic photography. So I had to find a way in my head to talk about this issue, but also doing the thing that I was able to do. So, for example, in the first day that we did the shooting, Diego, the friend of mine, also asked me to try to record some video interview to the guys. But of course, I think we have this way of thinking like in a journalistic way. Also, if I'm not a journalist, but to, for example, someone that had that experience to really want to know the struggle and the pain they have suffered. So it was strange because when we start to record the interview, a lot of them want to use their tongue language because they were traumatized about the experience that they have. And also, the strange thing was that they wanted to answer just the questions, for example, about their dreams and about how they want to spend their life. And so it was really beautiful to see this thing because I couldn't imagine something like that, of course, because I thought that we have to talk about struggle and pain and suffering. But of course, they didn't want to relive what they lived. So that thing let me think about more about also the project. And I wanted to share, of course, I have to talk a little bit about the issue and the struggle, but in terms of images and how to represent them, I wanted to start with the beauty of them, with their strong soul that they have. So more about empathy and more about beauty. From there, my photographic approach was not just merely involved capturing images, but portraying the individuality and complexity of each person.
Wow.
You mentioned the black and white, that I used the light and shadow, that also kind of a metaphor, because the anonymity of some asylum seeker in the photo not only respect their privacy, but also symbolize the struggle and the pain that refugees face in their own country. So was a kind of the thing that you don't know are all the shadow that they have. So this evokes a sense of empathy, but also frustration in the viewer because you cannot see some part of them. So highlighting the urgent need for change and recognition for their humanity. So I wanted to use beautiful and glossy images that are commonly associated with fashion and advertising to evoke empathy for the subject portrayed and also their experience. I wanted kind of shift the focus from the discrimination and the hardship faced by the refugees to their unique stories and inherent worth. I wanted to portray them as kind of celebrities, idols, and heroes, because for me, they are really the representation of that.
Wow.
And also, I wanted to restore their dignity, to bring attention to the discrimination they face.
Well, what's so beautiful about that approach is that so often people who are in a position of privilege really love to consume stories of other people who are, in a way, objectified by their own tragedy. And I love that you took a different approach, that rather than have them be completely defined by the trauma and the tragedy that they've gone through, you wanted to give them back some sort of agency and, as you said, dignity through these photos.
Yeah, because usually in the media, for example, about refugees and immigrants, they are a kind of indistinct mess of people that they don't want you to know the story. They don't want you to know the struggle. It's a kind of, as you said, maybe in the picture, you have to see crying, you have to see worst thing. But I think it's important to recognize to the key word for me is really empathy. To say, I don't have merit to be born in one place. And so if I'm in a situation like that, what can I do? What will I do? So for me at the moment, like idols and a celebrity is not anymore a Kardashian, but more people that really struggle to have a better life.
Yeah. I want to ask you to go back and say, for you, celebrities are no longer, what did you say?
A Kardashians.
Oh, the Kardashians.
Oh, yeah. Not that I have something with them, but I mean, for example, the true American dream is that one is not that you have a reality show.
Right. Right. But it's being able to live someplace where you can be fully who you are and love who you want to
Yes.
love, have the identity that you have. Yeah, I completely see what you're saying.
And how beautiful you are.
Yeah, well, that is definitely what comes across in your photographs. And so I think that you succeeded in that goal. And it is an interesting thing to create a coffee table book.
Yeah, and also one thing that I really like was that we are so used to advertising imagery that when we see the book, when we see the pictures and we don't know the subject of the book, we feel like we are really drawn to the images and to say how beautiful they are. And also this empathy, immediate empathy that I wanted to be beautiful like them. And so I really like this short circuit that happens, that when you know the story, then you say, that a little bit is strange in your mind.
Well, what I think really balances out this book is that you have the beautiful images, but you have quotes from them. You
Hmm.
might have a quote next to someone, and it's not necessarily their quote. It's just a quote that you
No.
gathered from this interviewing process. But then you do put the realistic statistics in the book as well about the size of the problem. So it is a really interesting balance that you've achieved in this book, and that someone would pick it up and start looking through it and looking at the pictures. But then when they start looking at the text, they're going to
Hmm.
have that story come in with the pictures. So that was a really well balanced approach to this.
Yeah, I wanted to have all these voices while you look at the pictures. You have all these voices from all around the world that tells you what happened. So, because among the various documents that are required to file an asylum application, one must include a letter in which the migrant recount their experiences in his own country and the reason behind their request for protection. So these letters are a testimony of torture endured and tangible evidence of the violence that the LGBTQI plus community still face worldwide. So to safeguard the identity and the privacy of the migrants, we choose to print only selected excerpts from this letter.
Right.
But I think these snippets of story serves to provide us like a global understanding of what is still happening worldwide.
Right. Right. Yeah. And you do talk about that these particular asylum seekers have been doubly traumatized, both where they came from, both in their home country, and then as part of the refugee experience. And I'm wondering if you can talk about that.
Yes, they face dual discrimination. I think I was talking about not in their home country, but in the host country, because they face dual discrimination being both immigrants and LGBTQI+. Because this is particularly evident in, for example, here in Italy, in refugee camps, where they endure attacks from fellow migrants. They came with them.
Wow.
So they experience complete isolation, making these organizations supporting LGBTQI plus migrant like really crucial and a source of support for their lives. And also, I was thinking of another testimony that comes to my mind. There is a story that a young man shared with me about his experience on being both Black and part of the LGBTQI plus community. Because despite facing discrimination and injustices in his own country, the thing that impacted him the most was the discrimination he faced from within the LGBT community itself in the host country.
Huh.
So I was really shocked about that, because everything that he went through, the worst thing was the confronting the LGBTQI plus community in the host country.
Do you think that was based on racial differences or anti-immigrant feelings? What was that based on?
Yes, I think a little bit. And also, I think that also social network have not helped us
Mm,
in the context of, especially in the hookup culture in the LGBT community, because maybe behind every high in an instant message, there is a life and a story. And so if you look superficial appearances, sometimes could happen if you don't treat like human being as human being,
right,
this happens. And I think that also social networks is also was a part of this.
right, right. That's so interesting. Well, I'm really curious. You also write a little bit about your background and why you feel a connection to this project and to your subjects as you're photographing them. And I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about that.
Yes, I was born in Italy, but I used to say that I'm born from two Italian immigrants because my mother was born in Tripoli, Libya,
Mm,
born from Sicilian parents, while my father is originally from Calabria in the south of Italy,
mm,
and they settled in the north of Italy in the city of Padua. So even though I was born in Italy, I never felt completely at home because I used to move between the north and the south. And I consider myself the son of immigrants because I always felt like an outsider in the place I was supposed to call home.
mm,
So it seems I couldn't find a place where I truly fit, but I felt like a unique blend of different cultures and background. And one event that I write in the book, it was when I went to attend a conference in association of repatriated Italians from Libya, and I was a child, and it was a kind of surreal experience as we gathered as refugees in Italy, sharing our stories and learning about our rights and procedure after being forced to leave Libya
mm-hmm,
because it was a colony, Italian colony, and my mother was one of those affected by Gaddafi.
mm-hmm.
That in 1970, with I don't know how to pronounce it. Really, it was coup d'état
Oh, yeah, coup d'etat.
because it's yeah. Thank you. Because she, at the age of 19, she had to flee the country with her family. So yeah, she stayed there 19 years.
Mm,
So this personal connection to migration and displacement further fueled my curiosity about this topic from a really young age, of course. Parents also instilled in me the valuable lesson about helping others and being proactive in our community and offering assistance to those in need. So they used to do really simple things but profound gestures were a part of their everyday practice. So, and they really shaped my perspective in life. And I always felt the urge to make a positive impact on the lives of others and be actively involved in supporting those who are going through tough times. But I always struggled because I wanted to do something with my work that could reach more people than only my neighbor or so. Yeah, it started from there,
right.
my need to do this project.
Yeah, that's so interesting. But, in the book, you also describe yourself as an introvert.
Yes.
I'm just so curious, despite being an introvert, you have this desire to communicate with a large number of people. But how have you found ways to communicate that work with being an introvert?
Yes. From my childhood, in the beginning, I was really like all the type of communication that are normal, like words, and also uh, like structures of things. It was really difficult for me because I felt all this. I worked a lot with my senses. For example, I used to dance all the time. I used to draw all the times. I used to sing all the times. So that was my like more comfortable way to express myself than
Mm.
words because I really felt not the people doesn't understand me. So I had to find a way to let me show myself. So I've been a dancer and a dance teacher, for example.
Wow.
Music is an important practice in my life. I play and sing in a rock progressive metal band.
Wow.
And also in the book, I recorded an original song that is composed by me.
Mm.
That in the beginning, I thought of using it merely to accompany the photo for small videos for social network or to advertising the book. But then I decided to create a song as a soundtrack for the project, because while I was working on the book, I always envision it in a very cinematic way.
Mm.
Also, another thing, yeah, I'm currently working also on developing an adaptation for a movie of the book.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if I will be able to do it, but I'm doing it. And yes, usually like just the medium of photography and the book itself didn't seem sufficient to me. I felt the need to express all the pain and suffering and resilience of them, of these beautiful souls. And after so many years that I've worked with different mediums, so I wanted to kind of blend all together and to use it also for the book.
Mm. Wow, that's pretty exciting. I would love to see a film from this book.
Yeah, me too.
So, I'm just wondering, what's the one thing that you want to leave people with around this work that you're doing? The book, these incredible stories you've heard, the really heroic people that you've had the chance to get to know and to photograph. What do you want people who pick up this book, what do you want them to understand?
I think certainly about the seriousness of this issue,
Mm-hmm.
and that is in 2023, there are still so many countries that criminalize it.
Right.
So Asylum aims, I think, to inform and make people understand the extent of this phenomenon, and also to realize that in some countries, just being oneself can lead to death.
Right.
So I think to become aware of what is happening in the world and understand how asylum policies are very important, and also the importance of the work of this organization that usually are possible just with the help of volunteers. But with their help, this individual can build a life in the host country. And the most important thing, I think, that here in Italy, we don't understand that refugees, asylum seekers could become a productive member of society. And so it's really a resource and it's not the problem.
Right, right. Yeah. And you know, it's so interesting because one thing I take away from your book is that you spoke earlier about how many films or news stories about asylum seekers, they're very anonymous. They're, you're not seeing the individual there. And your book makes me realize that with every person like that I might encounter or just know about, there's a whole story behind them. And
Yes.
yeah, that really being open to that story is going to be where you find your common humanity with that person.
Yeah. And while you were talking, I thought about this quote. I don't know if I reported correctly, made by Andrew Garfield, the actor, the Spider-Man actor,
Yeah.
that he said, if you know someone's story, you fall in love with him.
Wow.
And I think it's really true. When you know the struggle, when you know how he went through life, I think, yeah, it's really true.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, Umberto, where can people find out more about you and more about this book?
Okay, so I made a site for the project that is called asylum-theproject.com.
Mm-hmm.
And also in the site, anyone can donate to their organization involved in the project directly. There's also a link to my site. That is umbertonicoletti.com. Yeah, that's it. There's, of course, the song that is called Killing Beauty. That is also the name of my introduction in the book that you can find in all the streaming platform. Yeah, I think that's it.
Well, it's been really wonderful to talk to you and learn more about this really beautiful and moving project.
Thank you very much.
You're listening to Art Heals All Wounds. Thank you so much to Umberto Nicoletti for sharing the story behind his beautiful new book, Asylum. If you want to find out more about Umberto, check out his website, umbertonicoletti.com. You can also go to asylum-theproject.com to find out more about the book and how you can get involved. I'll have all of that info for you in the show notes. I want to share your story of how art has helped you feel like you belong. Go to my website, arthealsallwoundspodcast.com, and leave me a voicemail. Help me get enough of these listener stories to share them on an episode. And if you can leave me a small donation by following the link, Buy Me a Coffee, you'll be helping me to continue to make this show. Speaking of which, thank you to Marjorie Sturm for buying me a coffee. Your support keeps the show going. The music you've heard in this podcast is by Ketsa and Lobo Loco. This podcast was edited by Eva Hristova. As always, this show was recorded using Squadcast FM. Art Heals All Wounds comes to you from Oakland, California, on unceded territory of the Choqueño Ohlone people.